In this video, I'm going to be discussing the astrological placement of Saturn and Pisces in the birth chart. So before we delve into that, I just want to give you an overview of what Saturn in astrology means and why it's so significant to our astrological understanding and our studies of astrology. So Saturn is the lord of karma and fate and time. And so Saturn represents the qualities of life that have to be earned, not necessarily the things that we deserve. So Saturn is a strict teacher. It can be a disciplinarian that has to put us through a kind of learning where we are working very, very hard. And when we earn those rewards for that hard work, Saturn eases off on us and is kinder to us and is gentler to us. Not necessarily when we're in that process of doing the hard work. Saturn can really look over with its eyes, thinking that we're not good enough, thinking that we have not earned the right to have this yet. But when we put in the hard work and when we do get those rewards in the end, Saturn eases off its grip on us. And Saturn requires hard work and discipline. It means that we have to pull up our bootstraps and that we have to get to the nitty gritty of what we have to do. And are we living a fulfilling life? Are we accomplishing our goals? Because if we're procrastinating, if we're just sitting on the sidelines expecting other people to do it for us, if we're expecting that we're going to get things on a platter, we really have to check ourselves because that's not what Saturn is here to teach us. Saturn is here to teach us the long, slow burn of all the effort that you put into something, of all the steps that you take to climb up that mountain of success. And when you finally look back down, you will feel the reward of all that you have done and that it's all become worth it. Saturn also represents challenges and blocks that we have to get through. So, whatever sign that Saturn is in, that represents some challenges and some qualities that we have to take time and energy to develop. Those things don't just happen, they require a lot of work. And so, Saturn really is all about what we do using our blood, sweat, and tears to get it done, and what kinds of challenges that we have to rise above in order to achieve those goals and achieve those dreams that we set out for ourselves. So that's just a little summary of what Saturn is about. I do have a whole nother video on the meaning of Saturn in astrology, and I'll be sure to put that video down in the description below for you to watch. I really go in depth talking about the true meaning of this middle to outer planet in the solar system. And I think once you get a grasp and a good understanding of the planet, you can apply it to the sign in a much deeper, more profound, more insightful way. So I just want to throw that out there. And I would highly recommend checking out that video. So I'm going to list some dates for you. And if you were born between any of these dates, you have Saturn in the sign of Pisces. So there was one particular trek around the zodiac where Saturn visited Pisces from February 14th, 1935 to April 25th, 1937. And then again from October 17th, 1937 to January 14th, 1938. It visited Pisces again from March 23rd, 1964 to September 16th of 1964. And then from December 16th, 1964 to March 3rd, 1967. And then May 21st, 1993 to June 30th, 1993. January 28th, 1994 to April 7th, 1996. And then March 7th, 2023 to May 24th of 2025. And then September 1st, 2025 to February 13th, 2026. These are all the times that Saturn has been and will be in Pisces. And I'm recording this video on December 10th of 2023. So Saturn is currently in Pisces at this particular time. So I just want to give credit where credit's due. I got the dates from cafeastrology.com. So what does it mean when we combine the structured Saturn with the fluid and going with the flow sign of Pisces? Because structure is the very last thing that Pisces wants. It wants to blend and flow into the excesses of life. It wants to really merge into source energy, and it wants to connect with the world in a divine way. It wants to be one with the universe. That's what Pisces is going to be really after. Because what Pisces is about is it's about a love that we have for each other as souls, and that we share a divine experience of living on this physical plane. It's about the divinity in the physical. And Pisces is also about the dreams that we have. It's about opening up to our right brain of creativity, of intuition and imagination. And so all of these very Piscean qualities of wanting to be just being, just existing, just to take up space is really what Pisces comes down to. And it's all about a sense of oneness that we have for each other and for ourselves as well. So all of these kinds of qualities really move into Saturn's domain in a very interesting way. We could look at the sort of mundane level of it, because whenever Saturn's in Pisces, you will find that there are water barriers put up and into place. So, for instance, there was a water barrier put up the last time that Saturn was in Pisces in the mid 90s. So, Saturn represents boundaries, and Pisces is mutable water, it's flowing water. So, with Saturn there, we could really build up those boundaries in a very strong way. So now delving into what it actually means to have Saturn in your natal birth chart. So if you were born with Saturn in your birth chart, the very, very first point that I want to emphasize here is being able to take care of your own needs and wants versus the needs and wants of others. Because there's a tendency for Saturn and Pisces to dissolve the ego, dissolve the self. It's like a vanishing mirror. You know, you look in the mirror for your ego approval, but when that mirror dissolves and the ego sort of goes on a backtracking all the way back to Gender 1, we can find that our egos and our personal needs don't matter as much as the needs of others. And so it's a beautiful quality of those with Saturn and Pisces to be selfless and to take care of others and to really nurture and nourish others and provide for them in emotional ways, but also physical ways. And so the balance between taking care of others and being loving toward others, but also being loving towards ourselves, replenishing our energy, doing the things that bring us meaning and joy and passion and the things that nourish us in our lives is really going to be important for anyone with Saturn and Pisces, because the shadow side of Pisces is putting ourselves on the back burner and not filling up our mask with gas and oxygen to breathe. And then we give to others and we don't have a whole lot to give, and it becomes exhausting and it becomes a burden and it becomes something very difficult and not very satisfying and favorable for us. So, this balance between our own needs and the needs of others is super duper pivotal. Now, the next sort of big idea here is to learn the lessons that you need to learn when it comes to learning wisdom and choosing to go down a path of wisdom and spiritual understanding and spiritual growth. You may live a lifetime of solitude, of alone time, because that's very Pisces, is doing things on your own, doing things that nurtures you on your own, whatever it may be. It may be walking on your own. It may be meditation. It may be looking out to a starry night sky on your own and being one with the universe. So doing things that where you're in alone time, where you're recharging your batteries, you're spending time in introspection, and you're sitting with your feelings and you're reflecting on what you're feeling and on what you believe and what you're thinking is really what this comes down to. So if your life path is one of solitude, then go along with it and surrender to that. Now, this is a big one, taking spirituality seriously. So, if you put spirituality on the back burner in any way, shape, or form, then you need to get back on track. You need to get on the spiritual bus and get into some activity that is spiritually nourishing for you. It is super important that you have a spiritual practice, that you have a conscious contact to a higher power, that you are in a strong relationship with spirituality, that you embrace spirituality. That's going to be super key for you. So, what I mean when I say embrace spirituality is really grab it by the bones and get into it. Really delve deep into the spiritual excesses of, your soul. And what that could mean is connecting with your own soul and the souls of other people. So, if you have been so stuck down into the material plane, if you're not religious or you don't have a strong spiritual guidepost and truth for yourself, then you need to get that worked out and you need to move on the path of spirituality, because in order to find meaning and purpose in your life, you need to choose spirituality. That is sort of a demand for Saturn and Pisces, and a requirement for this placement is that you do not put spirituality on the back burner, because what becomes practical for you is in the impractical. What becomes pragmatic is in the impragmatic. What is in the spiritual, that is what Saturn demands that you get serious about in your life. So this could also be creating a spiritual structure, and you're doing it in a very disciplined way. So you have a spiritual practice that you're sticking to, that you have a sort of spiritual discipline. So you're deepening your spiritual practices. You're really getting honest with yourself about what kind of spiritual activities and what is my spiritual truth. That is what you're getting rigorously honest about in this life. And if you haven't got to it yet, then you need to, because that wagon is going to sit there and it's going to wait for you to get on board until the end of time. And until you can get on board with spirituality, you're not going to find a whole lot of meaning in your life. So, the next point that is really strong to make is that Saturn is the Lord of karma. It represents time and its limitations. It represents what you put into something, you get out of it. The effort that you put in to that thing that you feel so strongly about is exactly what you get back. So, what comes in comes back to you. The kindness that you put out into the world always has a way of coming back to you, and vice versa. So, karma, this idea of what goes around comes around. So, you get what you give. So, if you put in a lot of effort and a lot of balls and a lot of fanical malignance of time and energy, you will get that back. But if you procrastinate, if you do not put in that hard work, then you won't find a whole lot of rewards in your life. And Saturn is going to be very, very demanding, and it's going to require you to become more focused and more ambitious than you were in the past. Because as I said before, your Saturn return, if you have Saturn return in Pisces, if you've been putting spirituality on the back burner, it's not going to be the funnest time. So it's time to really strengthen your intuition, get in touch with your intuition, get in touch with your dreams, get in touch with your spiritual truth. That's what you do during a Saturn and Pisces return. So Saturn in Pisces is the end because Saturn is wrapping up a whole 29 and a half year cycle of going all the way around the zodiac. And so it's wrapping it up now in the sign of Pisces. And so Pisces is about endings and reflections. So we're completing all of that. We're reaping the karma from what has happened the last 29 and a half years, or 28 to 30 years, because that's when you have your Saturn return every 29 years. So 29 is a very karmic number in numerology, supposedly. So people with Saturn and Pisces might forge their own path and have their own ideals and philosophies in the spiritual sense. So people with this placement are very compassionate and kind. They have a great love for everyone and everything. They're anonymous. They see the divinity and everyone and everything, as I said before. So people with this placement can be very, very loving and empathetic towards others and themselves as well. And they're charitable. They want to give their time and their energy, and they want to make a difference in the world. They want to serve. They want to help out. And make the world a better, much kinder, much more loving place. So any way they can do that, maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's giving gifts to somebody, whatever that may be, they really mean well with everything that they do. And we need to see the divine love that they want to put forth into the world, regardless of some other qualities that I'm going to be discussing later on. So, can we be open hearted to the people who have this placement? And also, can those people be open hearted to all of us? So, Pisces rules over empathy and compassion and love on a soul level. And so that's certainly qualities that people with displacement can produce. So they also have a knack for making their dreams a reality, turning them into a reality, taking their ideas, their visions for what they want to do, and manifesting them in physical form. So they really have a talent for this. Um, they have a talent for actualizing their dreams. And so, whatever dream or idea that you have, this life is about making those dreams a reality, transcending the spiritual, the ethereal, the creative realms into the physical realms in very material ways, in tangible ways. Um, so maybe people with displacement have dreams, but they're rooted in the objective reality. That could be a possibility here. And so when you make plans and things do not go to plan, and when you get those spiritual detours, and when you think you're going down the wrong path, you're really not, because you may map out certain plans, and those plans may not happen the way that you think you happen, but everything in divine timing, everything in a steadamandi. So when you make plans and the universe just pulls out the rug from under you and puts blocks and puts challenges and tests out those plans, know that it is for your highest good and for the highest good of all, that this is not going the way that you think it is. So it's about going with the flow and trusting and surrendering to what the universe is trying to teach you, what the universe is trying to have you learn as a result of this plan that you mapped out, not not happening the way that you think it'll happen. So this life is about sitting in the silence and really swimming into the emotional depths. So, leaning into your feelings, riding those waves of emotions, whatever the feelings may be, and whatever is going on in your life, can you lean into those feelings? And can you truly feel those feelings and allow them to be present within you? Just sitting and feeling the feelings and letting them be, stopping to slow down and be present with what you're feeling in your life. Really validating your emotions is going to be key here. So, that is something very, very profound that would be good to remember here. So, you may want to add more art and beauty into your life. So, that's another key thing, because Pisces is very artistic. It wants to create, it wants to dream. It's a very imaginative energy that rules things like poetry and fiction and short stories and video games, and also well, that's a form of escapism, but art in all of its forms, music, painting, sculpture, whatever it may be. So adding more art and beauty into your life is a must. So Saturn rules over Capricorn, which corresponds to the 10th house. And so Capricorn is a very career-oriented sign. So wherever Saturn is placed in your natal chart, that'll give you a hint on the kinds of careers to consider. So maybe a career for you could be being creative, or something artistic, or it could be helping a charity, or it could be being a healer, or a therapist, somebody who wants to understand what someone's going through on a deep emotional level and wants to nourish them and provide a safe outlet for compassion and love, and to create a safe sanctuary, and to do all of that with love and light. And so People with displacement can be gentle and calm and even altruistic, being, very loving and selfless and compassionate, but also very shy and kind of uninterested fashion. So, you're very emotionally intelligent. So you can be calm and, can take a lot to ruffle, your feathers. And it can take you a lot to get very, very mad and super irritated. But there is a calm that you possess that is undeniable. So you're also very generous and very kind-hearted people. You want to give back to the world. You want, to provide peace and harmony and love. Um, and what you have to give is so strong, and what you want to give is so strong because, again, going back to the empathy and compassion that you feel for others. Um, So, a couple conflicts here may be the conflict that you may feel between the material and the spiritual realms. So, the dreamland versus reality. And you may lose the connection in the bridge between these two, getting so caught in one or the other and not having a strong sense of boundaries. You may be super spiritual and you have all these spiritual practices mapped out, or you may be the exact opposite and you may watch videos like this going, ugh, you know. But it is important to, again, be open to the spirituality and bridge the two realms because there can be some illusions and some confusion and some separation and a fog that you may find where um, the dreamland and reality are separate, and it's hard for you to probably bridge them together. So part of you is in the dream world, part of you is in the reality, and you have a gift and a talent if you can cultivate that of taking what you've dreamed of and your ideas and your visions in the dream world and then manifesting them into physical form. That is really you at the highest, most evolved, most high vibration level is that blending of the worlds. So you may be pretty persistent towards your goals, towards the things that you desire. Maybe you may feel more comfortable offering tangible support to others as opposed to emotional support because Saturn is a very tangible energy. But becoming more comfortable at providing emotional support and love for others and turning that love and compassion that you have for others onto yourself and knowing that you're not lost of hope and faith, and you can be fixed, and you can be healed and nourished and soothed and loved, and that you're worthy of that. So, you may also fall into other downsides of being a martyr. Um, And so going back to the whole idea of boundaries, because Pisces is no boundaries, but Saturn wants to put very, very rock solid boundaries into things. So maybe you can set clearer boundaries as you get older. It becomes easier for you to set clearer boundaries and gracefully say no to what doesn't serve you, to what will not bring you peace. Because anything that costs you your peace is way too expensive. Um, and so getting good at creating strong boundaries is going to be important for you. So you may be reserved, but it's important to open up and build connections and forge memberships and bonds with other people. So even though You are deeply loving and compassionate. There may be a reserve that you may not feel into your emotions, that you may not be the most emotionally open because Saturn represents restriction wherever it touches. It puts blocks, it puts confinements, it puts limitations on whatever it touches. And in Pisces, it deals with, compassion and emotions and dreams and all these kinds of things. So, other downsides of Saturn and Pisces could be stuck in an illusion, because the downside to Pisces could be disillusionment and not seeing things clearly for what they are. Thinking you're seeing something, but it's not what it seems to be. So, another downside is being stuck in victim consciousness, um, where you, feel, ask why me, and feeling like a victim. And you may experience a lot of regrets and a lot of guilt and a lot of those kinds of emotions, and also loss of faith in yourself and faith in a higher power. So those are also downsides. You may feel very sad or down or depressed sometimes, and filled with sorrow, but you can, reach across the aisle, and when you can be vulnerable and reach across the aisle and ask someone to nourish you and nurture you, you can do that. And it's about being emotionally honest, emotionally vulnerable, and open emotionally. And that is something that you're working on in this life. So, it's really about getting um, the love and the nurturing that you crave on a deep level. So you may also be highly sensitive. That's another key piece here. That your sensitivity may be super heightened with Saturn and Pisces, and you may be turned off by people who are too out there spiritually, or too, emotionally expressive, um, or people who play the victim. So you may be turned off by sort of Pisces-like people that, go with the flow and um, are, very, emotional and all of these Piscean qualities. But it's about embracing these parts of yourself, embracing the emotional and compassionate and creative and dreamy parts of yourself, and living a life that is, when you're co-creating your life with the divine. So that is all I have to say on Saturn in the sign of Pisces. I do hope that you found value from this video, and if you did, please subscribe to my channel, and hit the little bell so that you don't miss my latest videos. Like this video so that it can get out to more people, and maybe share this video with your friends if you think that they will find something interesting in this video, especially if they have Saturn and Pisces. So thanks for tuning in, and bye for now.